So you're planning on buying one of the JBL Live series earphones, but you're not quite sure which one's for you. They all are slightly different when it comes to how they perform on a sound front, but when it comes to their overall style, there are significant differences. So if you do want to see my in-depth review about how these earphones are, I have done an in-depth review on the Live Beam 3. So if you don't want to watch that, I will leave that link down in the description below. But I am doing this quick comparison so you know which one's for you, and of course, just in time for those sale seasons. So without further ado, let's jump into how these are built. On a build front, these are put together very well and their cases are very similar. All these cases do have matte finishes, and when it comes to the Live Beam 3, this is the one set of earphones that has a stemmed style with a seal. So if you're into active noise cancelling, this makes the most sense for you. But all these earphones do have a little bit of a glossy finish on them, which tends to hold onto a lot of fingerprints. The Buds style earphones, of course, don't have a stem and they fit very snug and comfortably within your ear. These do have the most secure and snug feel, so these will make the most sense, especially if you're an athlete or if you have a very active lifestyle. These do sit very snug and tight within every ear. And the Flex style earphones do have the stem, but they are minus the seal. So if you do like listening to your surroundings when you're doing chores at home, or even if you go on a walk or a run, these earphones will make the most sense for you because they are open and comfortable. And much like the Beam and Buds variant, they do have the glossy section on the outside, so they are prone to fingerprints as well. All cases have the same design on the outside, but the insides are different so they can hold the different styles of earphones. They're not exactly the same, so have differently sized batteries too. The Buds 3 lid doesn't extend as far back as the Beam and Flex, so I presume the batteries might be placed differently that led to JBL having to make the maximum open angle on the Buds case a little bit different. On an ingress protection level, the Live Buds and Live Beam have an IP55 rating, whereas the Flex has an IP54 rating. On a feature front, all these earphones come with Bluetooth version 5.3, multi-point connectivity. You do get wireless charging, but if you really want to get into it with all the details and features these have, you have to go into the JBL headphones app. So I'll quickly walk you through it. If you do want to know about a lot more detail, head on over to my in-depth review of the JBL Live Beam 3, but I'll just walk you through what this is about. So of course, within the app, the JBL app, you do get all the percentages of the earphones and the case. You do have your ambient sound control with the active noise cancelling and so on. You can go into your smart case settings as well and sort of customize all the little details you want to, which is pretty cool, something I've not seen before. Then of course you can check your best fit. There's a smart talk option over here. There is also personal sound amplification, smart audio video, smart automation, gesture control and so on. So again, I go into a lot more detail in my in-depth review. You might want to check that out. Then you can go into the audio section where you can activate the high-res audio. You can play with the EQ modes. It's got a few EQ modes, and you can play with the manual EQ mode as well. It does have an adaptive EQ mode as well. And then you get spatial audio, of course. Personify is something that's quite interesting because it does like a hearing test. It's worthwhile doing this test in the middle of the night when it's absolutely quiet. Switch off your fan, switch off your AC, make sure it's absolutely silent and do the test, because the way this will compensate for your ears, it is properly bespoke. It is tuned specifically for you, making it truly a very personalized set of earphones. I would recommend doing that in the absolute quiet of the night. Then you have your left-right sound balance, maximum volume limiter, which I do always advise having on. And then for your phone calls, you have your sound level optimizer, different sound settings you can play around with, voice settings you can play around with, voice aware to bleed your voice into you while you're on a phone call. I've only seen JBL do this. And you do have a private call mode where you can hold the sort of earphone closer to you and whisper into the mic, which is cool. I think I've got a demo of this on my Live Beam 3 review. And of course, in others, you've got a relaxed sound option where you can play back sort of different audio before going to sleep. It's pretty cool, where you can have waves, nighttime, a fireplace, in nature, water running. Find My Buds, power saving mode, and of course support. So there's a lot going on over here that you can of course play around with. Moving on to the active noise cancelling, something I didn't expect was the Flex to have noise cancelling as well, because it's an open set of earphones, but it does have some form of active noise cancelling despite not being an absolute seal. And it is a pretty decent performer, I have to say, because it does a good job, like the other two, of eliminating lower frequencies and mid frequencies, but it does let in a few of the higher frequencies in because it is an open style. And the thing is with the open style in particular is when the ANC is on the Flex, it sort of makes the high frequencies more noticeable. So I've found myself preferring to put the active noise cancelling off on the open style, because The whole point of an open style is to let your environment in. You know what's going around you while you're doing your chores, while you're going for a walk or a run. You want to be aware of, is there a car near me, or a cycle or a bike near me. So I mean, to each his own. You might just like how it handles its active noise cancelling. I think it does it well, but I think it will suit different people in different scenarios. When it comes to the Beam and the Buds in particular, their active noise cancelling is terrifically good. In fact, that higher frequency that comes in with the Flex, this tends to cancel out very well, and the mid and lower frequencies as well are kind of very aggressively sort of cut out compared to the Flex for obvious reasons. But the thing is, I haven't felt any sort of pressure, or I've not felt nauseous while using the active noise cancelling. JBL does do a very good job with the adaptive ANC in particular, which these do have. So I think they do a very good job with that. More so with higher frequencies than some other brands do. So all these earphones do come with 6 microphones. That's 3 microphones per earbud, which help with the active noise cancelling. But they also help towards the environmental noise cancelling to help carry your voice over to your recipient for any phone calls you may want to make. So I have tested the Beam3 in the past, but I haven't tested the other two. But I do suspect there to be a few differences, but you would be the best judge to see if there are, because you will be sitting in the reviewer seat. So let me head on over to the busy street and give you that call demo to show you how this would perform in a very busy environment. So I'm calling you from the usual busy street. I do all of my call tests from, just to give you a sense of how much of noise these earphones are going to be battling during these call tests in particular. And as you can see, there's a whole bunch of two-wheelers, four-wheelers, three-wheelers, trucks, buses going on behind me, and it's just about maybe 8 feet away from me. And you might get the occasional pressure horn as well that creeps in, and behind me there is some construction work that is of course never ending. So all these earphones have a lot to battle, of course. And I have been on the camera microphone all this time to give you that sense of all the noise in the ambience around me. And I'll switch over to the JBL Live Buds 3 microphones right about now. So this is the overall audio tonality you can expect to carry over to your recipient in this kind of environment. No doubt, if you're in office or if you're at home, it will be a lot more controlled because it doesn't have all these sort of noises to battle with. And of course, these are right now on their maximum ANC mode, which I will have all the other earphones on as well. So this will give you a better sense of, should I say, how the vocal tonality carries over to your recipient. Now, in the Live Beam in-depth review, I have toggled between the ANC modes just to see if there's an extra load on the ENC. So that's something that you'll be able to hear. So you can head on over to that review if you do want to see if there is a bit of a difference. But anyway, this has been the Live Buds 3, and I'll switch over to the Live Beam 3 right about now. So these earphones also do have a seal like the Live Buds 3, so I can't hear too much of what's going on around me. So it's nice that I can't hear a lot of the noise because the ANC is on. But will there be an audio quality for you as the recipient? I'm not too sure, because the only real difference I think that these two might have is that this one's stem does extend slightly further out. So the microphone for this, the speak mic at least, is further closer to my mouth. So there might be a slight vocal tonality difference. But again, you are sitting in the reviewer seat, so you'd be the best judge to see whether or not there was that shift between the Buds 3 and the Live Beam 3 for overall vocal tonality. And of course, you do get a whole lot of features within the app, like voice aware, and you can even change the tuning of the voice coming in, which I have demoed in the Live Beam 3 call demo, which you can always check out. So anyway, this has been the Live Beam 3 call demo, and I'll switch over to the Live Flex 3 right about now. So the first difference I see is, of course, there's no seal, there's no ear tip, so I can hear these bikes and cars going past. Now the active noise cancelling is on with this, which I think is doing a pretty good job of suppressing a lot of the mid and lower frequencies that are coming in from the traffic behind me. But a lot of the high frequencies are sort of bleeding in terrifically. And the fact that this has ANC on an open set of earphones is actually quite sensational. So it does help with a bit of suppression, but it's obviously not as good as the sealed variants, of course. Now, this, of course, does have the stem design, so the microphone, the feed mic will be lower down. So again, you'd be the best just to see if you do like the overall vocal tonality of how the Live Flex sounds compared to the Live Beam and Live Buds 3, of course. And anyway, there you have it. That has been the call demo for the 3 of these earphones. And I do hope that this demo has given you a better understanding for all of these earphones. And I will see you back at the studio. The Live Beam 3 and the Live Buds 3 both come with 10mm dynamic drivers, and due to the Flex's open design, it does need a slightly larger driver. So it comes with a 12mm dynamic driver. All of these have a frequency response of 20 Hz all the way up to 40,000 Hz, and they support SPC, AAC and the high-res LDAC codec as well. On a volume front, these are very comfortable to listen to at about maybe 45-50% volume, but these can get a little too loud for me at about maybe 60% volume. So I wouldn't recommend listening to these at 70% or beyond over prolonged periods of time if you do intend on preserving your hearing. As with all audio equipment, these can thin out at lower volumes, but JBL does have a low volume adaptive EQ which does compensate for this. So even at lower volumes, it does have a little more roundedness when this is on, but for whatever reason, the Live Buds doesn't seem to have this. Now, as far as I know, these are all on their latest softwares, but only the Flex and Live Beam 3 has that low adaptive EQ, whereas the low volume adaptive EQ, whereas the Live Buds 3, I just don't see it when it's connected to the app. When it comes to their soundstage, all of these earphones do perform like most other TWS earphones. The stage will exist within a bubble in your head. You do have good left and right separation with a well-centered phantom channel. Now, you do occasionally get the illusion of some tones coming from slightly further out of the earphones, but this does happen very rarely. Now, this can depend on the kind of quality of recording and file you're listening to, and this can occur a little more when you're listening to the LDAC codec with a high resolution source. When it comes to the imaging, now none of these are audiophile grade sets of wireless earphones, no doubt, but having that LDAC codec does help sharpen up the nuances, provided of course you do have a high-res source. Don't switch on the LDAC codec and then listen to an MP3 file or some audio off of YouTube and expect these to sound better. You do need much higher resolution audio. You need to sort of get the source file that can give you that much data. Switching on the LDAC codec only opens the floodgates, but it doesn't let in that much more data if you're not feeding it that much data. So nuances will sharpen up when you do have the LDAC codec on, again, provided you do have a high-res source, and things do get a little sharper, a little better defined, and I usually prefer having this on the LDAC codec since it is available, but of course I need to emphasize that you do need a high-res source to really be able to tell the difference between the SPC and AAC codecs and the LDAC codec as well. Sound-wise, the Live Buds 3 and the Live Beam 3 can be compared more so because they are a sealed design. The Flex is an open one, so I'll start with the Live Beam and the Live Buds. I did find the Beam to be a bit lacking in the highs for my in-depth review. I did wish it had a little more excitement there, but this is of course quickly corrected with a little tweaking from the EQ in the app. The mids aren't very forward, but what is its bass presentation. It's large, bold and ever excited to come at you with bounding energy. If you're a bass enthusiast from this lot of earphones, this will be the one for you. And now moving on to the Live Buds 3. That high frequency excitement I felt the Beam missed straight out of the box, these have. They've got the right amount of energy in their presentation in the highs, with the mid-range being a little more forward than the Beam, and they do carry a cleaner response than the Beam in these ranges thanks to the fact that its lows aren't as accentuated. The bass in these is tuned to be more balanced than tweaked like the Beam 3, and I found myself preferring how these sound since I'm not a bass enthusiast. These are tuned just right for me, but of course they're no slouch in the bass department when you start playing around with the EQs provided in the app. And finally, moving on to the Live Flex 3. These are targeted at the individual who wants to be well aware of their surroundings, whether doing chores at home or going out for a walk or run, so clearly needed a larger driver to push out a little more energy to compensate for being open. These are well detailed in the highs, and you can tell this range has been boosted more than the other sets of earphones. It does have to battle with being an open set after all. Despite this boost, it's not fatiguing but can get close to it depending on what kind of music you're listening to. 60s recordings might hurt your ear. Mids are on the thinner side since its lower mids are recessed, so vocals do come through clear and clean but not as rounded as I'd like, and due to this tuning, these get dangerously close to being sibilant. The lower frequencies are fun to listen to, but if you're an open ear earphone user, you know that sub-low frequencies won't carry on over to you as well as sealed earphones can. Having said that, these aren't thin in this range at all, since it has been boosted to ensure it's a fun listen. The lows do sound more enthusiastic than I expected them to, most likely due to that lower mid recess. This method always works to emphasize the lows. So to sum up, overall on a build front, these things are put together very well. After all, these are JBL's flagship products, and I really do like brands that stick to this matte finish because glossy just shows scuffs and scratches very quickly. I do like that the screen seems kind of, it does seem to have some kind of an oleophobic layering, because it doesn't grease as badly as I thought that it would. The earphones, on the other hand, all of them have a very sort of glossy finish, be it the Buds or the Beam or even the Flex. The outer section of it does have that very glossy thing. So, I mean, if your hands are kind of sweaty or clammy, it's going to pick it up. So I tend to sort of wipe these down before putting them in, so that when I open the lid, it's not as noticeable when you first have to interact with it. But overall, on a build front, I think they're put together very well. Comfort-wise, I think they've found a decent designs for all of these earphones, because I myself am sensitive to larger housings in my left ear because I have a smaller left concha, and I have at no point experienced any ear fatigue with either of these, be it the Beam3, the Buds 3 or the Flex 3. Now, no doubt, if you're somebody who doesn't like having a seal, the Flex is a good option to have, because of course it is open and it is of course quite comfortable. I think that's the safest set to go for if you're worried about feeling uncomfortable or worried about larger housings. But I'd say for me, I found all of them to be pretty comfortable, and depending on what style you like, of course you can check it out. And something I did forget to mention, that JBL has something called the JBL Fit Checker app. I'll leave the link down in the description below. If you do want to find out which one's the perfect one for you, you can just head on over to that app, and it does this scan of your ears, and then after that it does ask you a few questions, and based on all the inputs, it will tell you which one is best suited for you. So you can of course check that out if you'd like to. Feature wise, all these earphones are absolutely loaded. In fact, I haven't covered it in too much detail over here, because I mean it's just a quick comparison. But if you do want to see everything that these can do, head on over to my JBL Live Beam 3 review. I go into a lot of detail about what the app can do. I mean, it's most of the features are there. If you want absolute control, you have to go into the JBL app, of course. And I mean, in general, it's got everything you need. And one of the things that I really like most of all with this kind of set of earphones is, I've actually noticed that I'm not taking my phone out of my pocket as much to go into my media controls or swap through songs, next, previous, volume controls, all that sort of stuff. I find it easy to just take out the case and play around with that, because it just makes it that much quicker. And the fact that I'm controlling it on the case means I'm not going into other apps and doom scrolling and wasting time. So I have actually found that using this method of controlling my media it makes me a little more efficient whenever I'm doing work or even listening to music and writing scripts. So I really do like that they've got that touchscreen on the case. It does help in certain settings, of course. When it comes to its active noise cancelling, if you're somebody who wants really good active noise cancelling, obviously you're going to lean more towards the variants that have a seal. Both the Beam3 and the Buds 3 are very good performers. I think they're very similar when it comes to the active noise cancelling. And of course, if you want an open style, you go for the Flex. That's the whole point of the Live series. They give you every option that you'd most likely want. So, I mean, if you want a Bud style that sits more securely for your runs, that's the one to go for. If you want something that, you like to have a stem, that's the one to go for. If you don't want a seal and you want an open design, the Flex is the one to go for. So they've given you the entire spread. I mean, I'd say they're good performers on ANC, and I'm even surprised that the Flex even has some level of active noise cancelling that does reasonably well for a set of open style earphones. I don't think I've experienced this before with any other brand or with any other open style earphones, but it is really a neat feature to have. And moving on to the ANC that has those microphones also help with calls. So I have not yet heard the demo that I've recorded, but again, if you've missed that chapter, head on over to the call chapter to see how my voice carries over to you, the recipient in this case, in a very busy setting, because this will give you a good idea as to how your voice will carry over to your recipient in that kind of environment. No doubt it'll do much better in a controlled environment in an office or a home, but head on over there if you have missed it. Moving on to a sound front, when it comes to these earphones, I did think that they'd sound very similar, but of course, I did expect a difference between the open design and the sealed ones. So I did think the Buds and the Beam would sound very similar, but they do have slightly different tunings. I made sure that everything was kind of off in the app and so on. Now, things that could factor is the mechanical stuff within it. I mean, it's a different enclosure, so the sound will work differently in different enclosures for one, and maybe JBL has just tuned them slightly differently. But when it comes to the Beam, it is the bigger sounding one in the bass. I'm talking about straight out of the box without any EQs on. It is bigger in the bass. It is a little more recessed in the mid-range, but it has kind of, I think, more rounded lower mids for vocals for male and female, and the upper frequencies are kind of suppressed a bit. They're not as forward or as excited as I would have liked them. But that's where the buds comes in, because the buds come in with a little bit more excitement in the highs, which I do like, and the mid-range does have an accentuation where it needs to be, and the bass, when it comes to the lower frequencies, I find that to be just right. It's more balanced sounding than the Beam in particular. So I do like how the buds are tuned compared to the Beam. Of course, it is a little more controlled in the bass. It's not as big. It's not trying to be, I mean, it's not as I don't want to use the word obnoxious with the Beam3, but it's a little too forward for my taste. The buds do it just right. And then of course, when you move on to the Flex, it's a totally different story. It's a larger driver because it is battling more air around it. It is an open set of earphones. So for an open set of earphones, it does have a very good amount of bass for sure, and there is a good amount of richness in the highs. But I do wish it had a little more roundedness in the lower mids. But the issue is, if you do that with the lower mids, the bass won't sound as prominent. So I can see why JBL has tuned this the way they have. And honestly, all of them do have their slight different characteristics when it comes to how they sound, but all of them are fun sounding. They have managed to sort of ensure that these are fun to listen to. If you listen to dance music, if you listen to classical music, if you listen to rock music, if you listen to metal, all of these are good fun. And of course, if you want a little more flavor, or if you want a little more fun in your music, you've got those EQs you can play around with, as well as the manual EQ you can play around with, which is always fun to do. So all in all, I'd say all of these earphones are pretty nice, because I mean, they give you the options to get the style you want, and they're fun sounding, and they're of course loaded with features. So of course, if you do want to make these yours, let me jump over to how much these are priced at. Well, all of them have a maximum retail price of 24,999 rupees over here in India. But they currently have a selling price of about 14,999 rupees. And JBL does have a few discounts going on right now. So if you do want to avail a further 1,000 rupee discount, you can use the code JBLX Paul's POV at checkout on the JBL website in particular. And if I'm not mistaken, this sale, or should I say this specific discount with the code, is extending for about a month. So I'll leave the dates over here right after confirming from them. So are these value for money? Well, I'd say, considering there's already such a huge discount on them, and you can get a further 1,000 rupee discount on the JBL website especially. So and the features you get is, I've not seen it anywhere else. I have seen companies that have touchscreens on the front section of the case, but not on the lid. So this is a completely different design. It is quite different, of course, and of course you get that build quality. So overall, I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with these. These are, of course, JBL's top of the line, and they will be a very nice set to own going forward. So I hope you found this video helpful and informative, and I do hope that I've helped you make some sort of purchase decision. If you would like to help support the channel, I'm sure you know exactly how to. But of course, thank you for tuning into Paul's POV for some sound advice.